Despite the anxiety I have to battle in order to get out of the apartment, this is actually a very exciting day for me. Turning my full attention to the Nikon D200 that I purchased exactly 2 months ago. So much so that I've been sort of delaying getting started. Not simply because of anxiety, but also to make the feeling last. I've done this a few times recently. I've gone shooting with an old Nikon DSLR, which has been incredibly interesting to me and fun because I have very little Nikon experience. I've mostly always shot Canon. I'm coming up here to the top of the mountain because I just found out that in a few days they're going to be closing it down for 2 years. That's just super, considering I just bought an annual parking pass a few months ago, and I couldn't start using it until very recently because the roads were too icy. Not safe. The pass is not specifically for this one location. However, this one location is almost the entire reason I decided to buy it. So now I have to try to get that out of my mind. But these are not my first images with the Nikon D200. I have been shooting it for the entirety of these 2 months. But let's just start with these here today. I have a definite opinion about the camera. It's a strong opinion, and I remember my initial reaction vividly. So let's talk about that, and then fast forward to 2 months later, and whether or not my feelings have changed. I suppose my initial reaction occurred in multiple parts. It would be more accurate to describe it as initial reactions. I bought the camera for $120 US while I was making a video about the D2X, and it arrived while I was still making the D2X video, so I opened the box in that video. Firstly, the camera was in beautiful condition. I was super pleased about that. And I don't mind beat-up cameras. I really don't. I certainly own a few. But there is something undeniably fun about getting one in really good condition. So my first reaction was, wow, this is a beautiful camera. Beyond just the condition, truly a really nice design. Followed swiftly by, wow, this feels great to hold. Very beefy. I've been vegetarian for nearly 30 years. I should probably find a better word than beefy. Nevertheless, it's beefy, or whatever, planty. Much more substantial than any APS-C camera that I've ever used. It feels premium and thought out. Gorgeous industrial design. I am a big fan of cameras with an integrated vertical grip, but as far as cameras without an integrated vertical grip go, I can't think of one that feels better in the hand than the D200. If I were comparing it to a Canon camera, it kind of feels like a 5D Mark II to hold. Not just to hold, but it has a large, gorgeous screen, for example. A very mature, clean, clear, usable, post-first generation button layout. It's hard to explain, but the D200 looks a lot more modern than I'd expect from a camera from 2005. In fact, it predates the 5D Mark II by 3 years. And really, it's bizarre that I'm comparing it to a 5D Mark II because that's a full-frame camera, and this is a cropped sensor camera. A better comparison might be a Canon 20D. And I really like the 20D. I also bought a 20D within the last couple of months. Got it for $50 USD. And it too is in nearly mint condition. And that's a great camera. I love the 20D. 10D and 20D videos are in the works, by the way. But in terms of physicality, the 20D is dainty with a tiny screen. Looks kind of primitive. Feels a bit primitive too. Again, I like primitive things, so that's not a problem for me. It just looks like an early DSLR. And I don't mean it in a disparaging way. I just offer it as, my opinion. Maybe because Nikon had yet to release a full-frame camera, they did, in fact, see this more aligned with the Canon 5D series. I don't know. As I say, my Nikon knowledge, experience is microscopic. Yes, I could look this stuff up, but I don't want to read the internet to you. I just want to tell you what I think. So I loved the way the camera looked immediately. I loved the way it felt in the hand from the first moment I held it. Then I stepped out onto the balcony and took a few photos of my best kitty friend, Miyako. Despite not being in love with the shutter sound, I absolutely loved the way it felt to shoot the camera. Felt so satisfying. And by the way, it didn't take long for me to come around to actually liking the shutter release sound. But it did throw me at first. It was not the sound I was expecting, I guess. From what I can remember, I've reacted similarly to all the Nikons I've tried so far in the last couple of months. It's silly and it doesn't matter, but Nikon DSLRs from this era tend to have a looser, floppier sound as compared to Canon cameras from the same period. But I don't still hate the shutter sound. It was just an initial reaction kind of thing. I shot with a pair of EOS Rs for 5 years, and that camera has one awful shutter sound. But if you're happy with the camera overall, you get over the sound, I guess. This camera has a max shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second, which is so awesome, and is by no means a given with a non-flagship camera. But we've got it here in the D200, and that's a huge deal to me. I really appreciate that. And that's with a base ISO of 100. So it's nice. You can shoot fast lenses wide open in the sun pretty easily. The D200 only cost $1,700 US upon release, which was shocking to me to learn. I feel like this could have easily gone for a lot more than that. I guess competition was already pretty fierce by 2005. But the D100 was $2,000. Then again, the Canon 20D was only $1,500, so I guess it makes sense. The Canon 20D also seems very underpriced. Not that I'm complaining. I guess I've made quite a few videos in this style at this point, and there is a business as usual feeling that I try to fight and not let this just become a routine. But regardless, not very many videos I make feel special as I'm making them. I'm not speaking to the quality of the end result, just how it feels or felt for me as the one out there doing the photography. Because going out with the D200 never stopped feeling exciting to me. The camera itself was all the motivation I needed. I'm sure that feeling will wear off in time, but so far, 2 months in, it really hasn't. This is one compelling camera that keeps me wanting to come back for more. Yeah, this was just pure recreation for me. But everything felt so great with the D200 immediately, the look, the feel, and the experience. Which leaves just one final hurdle to cross. Do the images actually look good? And leaving my pathetic photography skills out of it. Absolutely yes, the images look great. And I'm using some fairly inexpensive lenses here that Jerry Rigged Media loaned me a while ago. Link to Jerry's photography YouTube channel below. And thank you again, Jerry. I'm really grateful. I had a blast shooting Nikon these past few months. After snapping a couple of photos of my cat a few months ago, so just quick flashback here to 2 months ago. These are the very first frames I shot with the D200, right after I pulled it out of the box. I told the wife immediately after I shot these that I already loved the camera, not having even seen the images yet. Just had a feeling, I guess. Then I downloaded the images and wow, they actually looked really special, I thought. I mean, I photographed my cat on this rail probably hundreds of times in the last few years, on every type of camera imaginable, digital and otherwise. And I feel like the D200's rendering is absolutely special, absolutely unique, and I love it. I ended up choosing the D200 after I asked the internet for help. What is an inexpensive old Nikon DSLR that could sit comfortably on a shelf with a Canon 1D and 5D? The D700 won the vote, but that was too expensive. D200 was next. And thank you for that amazing suggestion. I got into a little bit of trouble here with my drone. The wind started getting pretty severe at exactly the wrong time. I stopped for a second to decide what to do. I decided, of course, to abandon my shot, but also not to just turn around. I chose the shortest path to get back over the mountain, so that if it fell from the sky, I could at least recover it. If it fell down into the abyss, I'd never be able to recover it. That area is so far from any roads, and it's really difficult terrain. I thought I might have to land it somewhere and walk over to it. It was struggling just to move at times, but fortunately I got the drone back over to where I was safely. Drones evidently don't perform well at high altitudes, and up here I'm flying 2 miles above sea level. The air is less dense, which is, I guess, non-ideal. The wind is obviously a huge problem as well, but I have no choice but to fly at high altitudes. Albuquerque is already a mile above sea level. I get a high altitude warning from my balcony. But that was it for me for the day. The stress of that sort of knocked me out of the mood. Plus the light is getting pretty harsh. I'll grab the D200 and head back out tomorrow morning. Nikon shooters will hate this, but another thing I love about the D200 is you can reverse the dials. You can set the front dial to control shutter and the back dial to control aperture. That makes a huge difference in the usability of the camera for me. You can't reverse the ridiculous backwards light meter though. Nikon's awful backwards light meter. If you're looking for a D200 video better than this one, well, throw a dart, but more specifically, if you haven't yet watched it, I recommend a video by Rumle Skafte. There it is playing behind my D200. Yes, I often sit around watching out-of-focus videos behind my D200. And what, you don't? So I watched Rumle Skafte's video before I was even interested in buying the D200. This is like a year ago. But then when I decided to buy it a few months ago, I watched more videos, and I did not find any that I enjoyed nearly this much. So, it's a good one. So I did not go back to the mountain today. Instead, I'm just aimlessly driving around with my D200. Whatever I get, wherever I end up, it's fine. Yesterday I shot everything with this 50mm 1.8D lens. Looks like this lens goes for about $100 US, give or take. Today I brought the 50mm again, but I also brought a 24 to 120, 3.5 to 5.6D, which goes for $60, $70, $80 US or so. Both lenses belong to Jerry. Jerry also gave me a lens, a Sigma 10 to 20mm, f4 to 5.6, I believe. Also goes for around $100 US. I can't fit a third lens into my bag today, so I left that one at home. Jerry loaned me some lenses, Jerry gave me a lens, loaned me some cameras, gave me some cameras, but the D200, as mentioned, I bought. I chose and I bought. Or maybe the comment section chose it for me, but that's because I asked for help. And thank you. You absolutely gave me fantastic advice. Have I mentioned that I adore this camera? Just love it. Seriously love it. But I've yet to choose or buy a lens. My recent purchases for the channel include this D200, the 10D and 20D I mentioned, and the drone. It's going to be a few months before I can afford a lens, but that's fine. The D200 it'll have to go back on the shelf anyway for a while I film some other videos that I have planned, and then I'll get back to it, and then I'll start coming to a decision about which lens I want to buy first, and that'll be great. That'll be fun all over again. But whatever lens I do choose, I don't think it will be either of the ones that I have with me today. I don't particularly love either of these lenses. Honestly, I can't wait to see what the camera can do with a lens that I do love. But there's plenty of time to get to that. I prefer having stuff to look forward to as opposed to instant gratification or getting everything all at once. I miss the pre-instant gratification world that I grew up in, so if my motivation for shooting old DSLRs is, at least in part, nostalgia-based, well, that's just part of the nostalgia for me. A link to Rumle Skafte and Jerry Rigged Media's YouTube channels in the description. Here's my entire history with Nikon. When my mom's dad died, he left me $5,000 and his film SLR, a Nikon. I don't know which Nikon it was. I bought my first car and a computer with the $5,000. And I did my first ever photo walks / drives with his Nikon camera and the car he bought me. But after shooting for months, I should have developed each roll after I finished shooting it, but I didn't. Like a moron, I discovered that all the film was blank. Now, was that my fault? Was it the camera's fault? I have no idea. That turned me off to photography for quite a while. It wasn't until digital became a thing that I felt safe enough to try again. Fast forwarding several years, I became a pro photographer. I shot Olympus, a Fuji S2 Pro briefly, which is actually a Nikon film body with Fuji electronics, so that is part of my Nikon history too, I would say. But then I landed on Canon and basically remained there until today, with one more little Nikon bump along the road. A handful of years later, I found myself in a situation where I was managing a photography studio wherein I was the only Canon shooter. Everyone else shot Nikon. I wasn't really interested in their Nikons, but there were times I was interested in their lenses, or lenses that belonged to the studio, which I could only use if I attached them to a Nikon body, so I did that sometimes. So what Nikon bodies did I end up shooting during this time, occasionally? Well, it's not as though I remember, though I have previously gone back to figure it out, just to satisfy my curiosity, so I know the answer. But from the perspective of me at the time, they made no impression on me whatsoever. I just was not a gearhead. I did not talk camera gear or think about camera gear or research camera gear. It was all about the act of photography and the photos themselves at the time for me. I notice and pay attention and care about camera models way more now than then, but the D200 and the D700 were actually among the ones I used, but as I say, they made no impression. Not because they weren't great. The D200 is great, I can now definitively state, but it just wasn't where my head was at the time. I was used to working with good gear, including medium format cameras with digital backs in studio. I was intimately familiar with my Canon gear, but everything else was just other to me. And hardware-wise, I was more interested in lenses than camera bodies. But around about 2007, I think, I found myself desperately needing to upgrade. I was still shooting the original, full-frame, 11-megapixel, $8,000 Canon 1DS from 2002. And this is around the time the Nikon D3 launched, and I got to spend a little time with the D3, and that camera made a bit more of an impression on me. I remember being absolutely blown away by it. In fact, I remember thinking, now I get it. Now I understand why people feel such devotion to their Nikons. That was an incredible camera. It very nearly caused me to switch. I did not end up switching, but I remember that it ticked all the boxes for me. But I ended up buying a Canon 5D Mark II when that came out, and shot on a pair of 5D Mark IIs for more than a decade. But in some alternate reality, I became a D3 shooter at that moment. That shot I just took sucked, so I'm not going to bother showing it. Wrong spot, wrong lens, it just wasn't good. So it's the next morning and I'm back on top of the mountain with my beautiful Nikon D200, a fresh memory card, pre-sunrise. I'll tell you, I didn't shoot much up here this morning. A little bit, but not much. This happens sometimes. I kind of just zoned out and felt appreciative to be out in nature, knowing that many people are stuck behind a desk, or worse. But no offense meant to anyone behind a desk. My wife is also behind a desk, but she wants to be. For me, it's abject torture. The screen, the menu too actually, but the screen on the D200 is so good. The best screen I've ever seen on a camera from 2005. It's not even close actually. So I made a D100 video a couple of weeks ago. I thought it would be interesting to have that as a frame of reference before looking at the D200. I got off to a rough start with the D100, but ultimately I ended up liking it very much. The D200 has almost erased the D100 from my memory. I find that I can't even relate the two cameras to each other. The D100 was a lot of fun to shoot, I remember. And I liked the images once I switched to RAW. Very much, actually. Less enthused about the Jpegs, but the D200 just kicks ass, and it's fun. RAWs are great, JPEGs are great. These have all been RAWs, slightly edited, but I didn't do anything drastic. That's pretty much how they look, with maybe a tiny bump in saturation or contrast here and there. I shot everything in RAW plus JPEG. I figured I'd show both, but I edited them so slightly that there just wasn't a big enough difference to make the comparison interesting. Ugh, I do not care for the composition of that shot. Weird. Sometimes I really prefer to shoot JPEGs straight out of an old DSLR. I think of it like film, only someone else is developing them for me, and I'm just picking up the prints. And I have just the one battery that came with the D200. My first time leaving the house, I was afraid that that one battery would not be enough. It definitely was, though. This is a very power-efficient camera. The battery indicator never even dropped below full power. Now, granted, I'm not a big overshooter generally, but I'm sure someone shooting thousands of images is going to get to the end of a battery. But I couldn't. I dropped something out here in this location. I spent the next hour and a half looking, never found it. So frustrating. That'll be $50 to replace, maybe 30 to 35 if I can find it on eBay. So for that reason, and because the light was pretty harsh now, I went home. I don't even know how many megapixels of resolution this camera has. I didn't even think about it until just this second. But I never bothered to look or notice. I'm not saying it's irrelevant, just that I guess it's not a factor for me in my relationship with these sorts of cameras. Not really. I said previously that the D100 is tons of fun, and that I love shooting it, but I've also mentioned that if you're looking for the most camera for the least money, the D100 is probably not the right choice. The D200, however, is. It absolutely is. It is the nostalgia darling, and yet it's also the uber-capable, affordable, badass camera that you might well be looking for. It is just great, and I don't know how many ways I can express that. But it's great, trust me, it is. This one is special. If it were full frame, it would be a real contender for top spot on my shelf of favorite old cameras. Or just somewhat closer to full frame, APS-H. I like APS-C cameras, I like all cameras, but the best APS-C camera ever created is still unlikely to produce better images than, say, the Canon 1DS Mark II or Canon 5D, both of which came out around the same time as the D200. And both of which are more expensive than the D200 today, especially the 1DS Mark II, considerably more expensive. But after the first four 1D/1DS series cameras and that original 5D, this probably is my favorite digital camera of all time. The next one in line. It's certainly my favorite APS-C camera that I've ever used. We'll see if I still feel that way after I spend a bunch of time with the 10D and 20D. I suspect I will, because I have shot those cameras before, including back when they were brand new models. The D200. Man, I was excited going into this, and all set to love the thing, and I ended up loving it more than I even would have thought possible. It's an awesome camera, and now I love a Nikon. Genuinely, I feel like I've grown as a person.